Alright, my name is LaTosha Mollette. I am a staff RN here at St. Francis. I'm a student at Northwestern University. We're going to talk about restraint documentation this morning for my project for Nursing 4291. As you know, we're getting ready to have our annual survey coming up, and our biggest thing right now is restraint documentation. I gave y'all some sheets that y'all can look at. On the back of the sheet, we all know about our green sticker that we put on our orders for doctors to sign, and they need to be signed every 24 hours if they're just a med-surg restraint. Talking with Jesse, basically we're not complying with this. We're not making sure that the doctors are signing these every calendar day. So we need to, catch them, say, hey doc, I need you to sign this for us, before you leave, because basically they're gonna start nitpicking about this kind of stuff and start holding us accountable for having patients in restraints and we don't have an order signed. And the other thing is we need to make sure that when we're having them sign these, that we do not fill out anything just with their name and date of birth. We don't need to fill out anything else. The doctors need to be filling out what kind of restraints they're in and all that. They need to sign date and time as well when they sign it. So it's going to be day nurse's responsibility to make sure that we're getting these signed. I know sometimes it's kind of hard because we may be in another patient's room or have something else going on and they slip in and slip out and we don't catch them. But we need to be doing everything we can to make sure we're getting these signed. The other thing is, along with having these signed, we need to make sure that we're doing our documentation in Cerner. And I think that was a big issue once we started doing a lot more computer charting in Cerner. Remembering to go in and select that task that says restraint, observe, range of motion, and neurovascular checks. We need to make sure we're doing it every 2 hours. And I think another biggest problem that Jesse said that he was noticing when our mock surveyors came in was that we're just always checking lying or quiet, asleep. And that's one of the big things that they're noticing, if they're asleep and quiet, why do we continue to have them in restraints? So we need to start thinking about, what, if the patient's on diprivan for comfort, if the diprivan, happens to be bought for about 5 minutes or we have our sedation vacation in the mornings, what is this patient doing, that's causing us to have to keep them in restraints? Say for instance, like last week we had a code and our patient in 6, when his diprivan would go off for just 2 minutes, he was waking up and coming out of the bed. That's why we have him restrained, because the diprivan is just very short acting with him. So we need to make sure that, we're thinking about those things when we're filling out that documentation in Cerner. And just make sure, another thing that I noticed whenever we're putting them in, the first when we started doing the Cerner documentation for restraints, is making sure that we have our accurate start time on there and make sure that there's no stop time. Because if you have a stop time, it won't populate over like it needs to for us to continue to document every 2 hours on it. Also, our plan of care, we need to make sure that we do a plan of care for risk for injury related to restraint use. And this needs to make sure that it's addressed, and like once we discontinue the restraints, that plan of care, it needs to be closed out. We've met that goal. I think Jesse said another thing that he was seeing the mock surveyors notice was that once the patient was out of restraints, we were still having a plan of care for that, and we don't need a plan of care if the patient is already out of restraints for that. Also, another thing that we need to make sure that we're doing is we have a daily need assessment for the need of restraints. And I know I'm probably a little guilty of that. I don't always do it every day, but we need to make sure that we're doing it every day to make sure, along with our neurovascular checks, to say, hey, look, do we really need these? Is the patient doing better? Are they able to follow commands? What are they doing when we, turn our sedation off in the mornings? And it helps us to remember to work towards getting them off of our restraints. Any questions so far?
Where's that at?
It's under the ad hoc. When you go to ad hoc, there's a tab. I think it's like on the first column that says assessment for the need of restraints.
So that should be a daily?
Yes, that should be a daily. And I don't know if we can maybe put an order in, like we do an order how we do with our neurovascular checks for 2 hours.
That's what it should be.
So that it will populate over daily. So that would be a reminder.
Well, I'm not sure. I know if you do that, I think it triggers to have the Q2 hour checks in there. Not only that, it actually links to the care plan. It's a risk for injury, so it helps remind you about the
care. What do you call it?
Care plan.
Care set.
Yes.
Yeah. They could do that.
Yeah.
Just click on one, it triggers all that stuff. And give us tasks.
We should talk to IS, like if you type in, to apply restraints and everything, for it to automatically start triggering all that stuff, rather than us remembering to go in
and put in your
put in 3 different things on top of it.
So yeah, maybe we can talk to IS about that. Whoever does
we could consider,
the next big thing is our behavioral restraints. And I don't think really we've had a lot of discussion on this, so this is something new that needs to be implemented. A good case in point is that we have a PEC patient in here now. We just got him yesterday. And basically with the behavioral restraints, this screen form has to be filled out every 4 hours. And the doctor has to sign. We're supposed to be calling the doctor every 4 hours saying, hey, look, this patient is still in restraints, just letting you know. They need to be, signing all these forms. And basically with this, if you look on this sheet, we have has to be documented every 15 minutes. Somebody needs to be laying their eyes on this patient every 15 minutes. And it's simple, just the location, MICU 6, in bed, and then your initials. It's nothing, hard to do. And it's on the internet. You go under patient-specific forms, and it's under the general tab under behavioral and seclusion documentation or something like that. But it's real easy to find. So just remember that that's part of it. If the patient is also in physical restraints, we still have to do the neurovascular checks in addition to this behavioral form being signed.
Every 2 hours.
Yes. So you have your 15-minute behavioral checklist, where you just initial and put the location, plus your 2-hour neurovascular check. Okay? And I guess with that, we will still need to have our daily assessment for need of restraints as long as they're here as well. Am I correct? So we kind of got, probably a little resistance from some people because it is a little bit more work, but it's just to cover us. And help protect the patient with that.
And somebody asked the question, well, why do we need a restraint on a PEC that's not physically restrained?
Right, it's considered seclusion.
Yeah, because if that patient got up and said, I'm fixing to leave, we would say, no, you can't.
Right.
Therefore, that patient's being secluded.
Right.
And if you look on that restraint form, there is a place under behavioral for seclusion.
Okay. So that would be our documentation. Just remember.
So, all right.
Right here.
Okay. So, do you do something every 2 hours, or do you?
You fill this form out every 4 hours.
And then you have a visual.
Yeah, the visual is on every behavioral patient.
Okay.
But the only time you're going to do the Q2 hour neurovascular checks is if that patient is actually in physical restraints. Okay. Otherwise, the Q15 minutes is good enough.
Right. So basically, that's the biggest thing with the behavioral restraints. We just got to make sure that we're documenting, having our stickers on our chart for every 4 hours, notifying the doctor, and they're probably going to start getting a little aggravated, that we're calling saying, hey, look, this patient's still in restraints. I'm just letting you know, but that's part of it. The first sheet is basically just kind of an overview of where we are as far as our documentation of restraints, the restraint forms that have been signed, how they're ordered, documentation, all that kind of stuff. Our goal is 90% on all of these items that we're monitoring, but we're less than 90%. For the month of February, we've been 64, 58, 41, so we definitely need to work to try to get that to 90%, if not better. And like I say, I know it's tough. Sometimes we're busy. We don't always get a chance to catch the physician and get them to come in to sign this the form, but we need to just try to make every effort to make sure that they sign it. I don't know, maybe we can try to figure out a way to get them to see these green forms, because a lot of times you have it folded over for them to sign and they'll still just overlook it and not sign it.
And guys, just remember that every hospital in our system that has been surveyed thus far, they have focused in thoroughly on restraints on everyone, so we can expect the same. They're gonna, every chart they look at, they're gonna look for somebody in restraints, and they're gonna look for missing signatures or missing documentation. So, you know, if we get all our ducks in a row on the front end, it'll be a lot easier than if we had to do it on the back end.
Now, is it okay, like if we put the sticker on the chart, say like we just write the date up here?
Yeah, you can put the name and the date of birth and the date, today's date. Okay. But the physician has to, he's the one that has to.
Date and time at the bottom.
Because he's the one actually making the restraint assessment.
Now for like the behavioral restraints, like in your case, since you have to do it every 4 hours, should he be putting the time up here as well? Like say, you know, he comes in at 7 o'clock this morning.
Well, I mean, now the doctor only has to sign that in person every 24 hours. But he has to be called and updated on that patient's condition every 4 hours. So you should be writing a time down below on the verbal order anyway. So you would be writing verbal order Dr. So-and-so on the bottom with the time on it. And he's going to have to come back and countersign all those when he gets here, though.
What about dual restraints, Diprovan and the restraints? At one time that was a big deal that they didn't like.
Well, like we just were discussing, basically if it's Diprovan, like on our event bundles, it's going to say for comfort. So that's not really considered a restraint in that case. Now, if it says Diprovan for agitation, that would be considered a chemical restraint. That's what we would need to document on here that we have, if you have a patient in physical restraints and in the chemical restraints. That's when we would need to document both.
At one time that was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, but and now, if you had somebody on Diprovan and in physical restraints, then it wouldn't change anything except the sticker needs to be filled out, the wrist restraints and chemical on there. But as far as what you're doing in way of checks would still be the same. It's just basically checking that additional piece on the form. But like Tasha was saying, it's all in the way it's worded. You know, if it says for comfort, that's what it's for comfort. It's not to change their behavior. If you're giving a drug to change somebody's behavior, then that's considered restraint. Versus maybe somebody that comes in that takes Valium 5 milligrams 3 times a day. That's part of their routine that they take every day. That's not a restraint. But if we had to give somebody Haldol because they're having a psychotic episode, then that would be a chemical restraint. So it's, you know, and just know behavior. One other thing I'm trying to remind everybody about the behavior. It's easy to check on there. People look at it and say harm to self. That don't mean by pulling an ET tube out. That means they're wanting to kill themselves. So just know the difference between behavioral and med-surg. Behavioral means either they're going to hurt you or kill you, or they're going to hurt themselves or kill themselves. So that's kind of. Any other questions?
All right, well, thank you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Tasha.